And in news that has shaken Hollywood tonight, one of its most enduring and unforgettable icons, Robert Duvall, has passed away. The celebrated Academy Award winner leaves behind a legacy built on a long and truly remarkable career, where he expertly defined a unique niche for himself as both a compelling, unconventional leading man and an indispensable supporting actor in some of the most monumental films ever made. The public story seems so clear a peaceful, dignified end to a 95-year journey for the legendary Robert Duvall. A final scene that felt fitting for a life well lived. However, his widow Luciana, now 54 years old, is stepping forward to completely shatter that carefully polished Hollywood narrative. What was truly transpiring behind the closed doors of their private Middleburg estate during his last fateful days on Earth. This startling confession is poised to rewrite everything we thought we knew about the man who famously played the Godfather's trusted consigliere. Although his legendary work on screen will undoubtedly endure for generations to come, the physical presence of this cinematic titan has now passed into the annals of history. We will start by examining the deeply moving and heartbreaking events that transpired in the quiet early hours of his final day. This was his final bow. It was on February 15th, 2026 that the entertainment world was shaken by the loss of one of its foundational pillars. At the venerable age of 95, Robert Duvall, the acclaimed actor who brought to life some of the most memorable characters in cinema history, died at his cherished home in Middleburg, Virginia. On the surface, it appeared to be a tranquil conclusion for an individual who dedicated his career to portraying some of the most formidable and tough-as-nails characters ever seen on screen. Curiously, the official announcement of his passing was not made right away. His wife, Luciana Pedraza, made a very conscious and deliberate decision to shield their family from the public eye for a full 24 hours, giving them a crucial day to absorb their grief without the relentless glare of news cameras or the explosion of social media alerts. It was only when she formally released the official statement on February 16, 2026, that the profound loss became a public reality for everyone else. In her statement, Luciana powerfully noted that while the world revered him as an Academy Award-winning titan of the film industry to her, he was quite simply her entire world. That single poignant sentence perfectly encapsulated a 3-decade love affair that possessed a depth far greater than any character he ever portrayed. Immediately after the news broke, an enormous outpouring of tributes began flooding in from the most respected and biggest names in the entertainment business. The iconic director Francis Ford Coppola, who guided him through several of his most celebrated film roles, spoke at length about his singular and incredible talent. His former co-star Al Pacino, along with many others, shared personal heartfelt memories of their time working with a man universally hailed as the greatest actor of his entire generation. Across all social media platforms, countless users shared clips of his most famous and impactful scenes. From the chilling, quiet menace of Tom Hagen to the weathered, rugged wisdom of Gus McCrae. For a period of several hours, the entire internet transformed into a massive living memorial service for the man affectionately known to all as Bobby. You see, for the majority of his final years, Robert Duvall made his home at Burnley, his historic 300-acre horse farm in Virginia. This sprawling, beautiful property was much more than just a home. It was his personal sanctuary. While so many other stars of his stature chose to remain in California, Robert greatly preferred the serene rolling hills and the quiet companionship of his beloved horses. Naturally, given his advanced age of 95, many people began to speculate whether a secret illness or a sudden tragic accident was the cause. His family, however, moved swiftly to put those rumours to rest, officially confirming that he had passed away from natural causes. It was, as they put it simply, the appointed time for a very long, rich and extraordinarily full life to reach its peaceful and natural end. As the entire world grieves for this cinematic giant, renewed attention is falling upon the woman who was his steadfast partner for 3 decades. Their entire story began with a serendipitous meeting that feels like it was lifted directly from a classic Hollywood movie script. Let's delve into the life of the woman who stood by this icon until the very end. This fateful bakery encounter took place all the way back in 1996 within the vibrant city of Buenos Aires, Argentina. At the time, Robert was in the country scouting potential filming locations for an upcoming project when he just so happened to stroll past a charming local bakery. And it was in this exact spot that he first laid eyes on Luciana Pedraza. In a tale that seems almost too perfect to be real, he didn't resort to a cliche pickup line or leverage his international fame. He was simply a man completely captivated by the spirit of a young woman who radiated energy and an incredible zest for life. Luciana was a mere 24 years old at that moment, while Robert was already 65. From an outsider's perspective, the 41-year age gap placed them in entirely different worlds. And as their relationship blossomed, this detail became a major point of discussion for the public and media alike. A great number of people were quite cynical in those early days, openly questioning if such a vast age difference could ever lead to a successful long-term relationship. As they began to converse, Luciana, seeing him as an interesting person rather than a global celebrity, went ahead and invited him to a party she was attending that weekend. That single simple act of normalcy established their budding relationship on a foundation of genuine honesty, something that is exceptionally rare in the often superficial world of entertainment. At that party, the two of them discovered a powerful shared language, not through words, but through the passionate movements of the Argentine tango. This intimate dance is built on the pillars of connection, unspoken rhythm, and profound trust. And it quickly became the very heartbeat of their growing bond. They spent countless hours that night dancing together, and it was patently obvious to anyone watching them that their magnetic connection was something far deeper than a fleeting friendship. As their relationship progressed over time, Luciana started to truly appreciate the incredible depth of the man she was falling for. Her perception of him evolved from just being her partner to becoming an ardent admirer of his artistic work. She would watch him completely transform into complex characters like his role in The Apostle. And through that, she began to fully grasp why he was widely considered an undisputed master of his craft. The couple dated for the better part of a decade before they ultimately chose to formalise their commitment to one another. In 2006, they were married in a remarkably quiet and understated ceremony. It was not a huge, sensational media spectacle with an army of guests. This was far more than just a ceremony. It was a quiet, personal pact to continue nurturing the beautiful life they had already begun building together. For Robert, this union was a profoundly fresh chapter after the heartbreak of 3 previous marriages that had all unfortunately ended in divorce. It was as if Luciana introduced a grounding stability and a deep sense of calm that had been glaringly absent from his world for a very long time. In a twist that sounds like something from a movie script, the icon's wife later confessed something that most fans found absolutely unbelievable. She revealed that when they were first introduced, she genuinely had no clue who the famous Robert Duvall even was. Luciana wasn't dazzled or starstruck in the slightest, simply because she had never seen his Oscar-winning films or paid any attention to his legendary career in Hollywood. She has also mentioned that Robert, to this day, is convinced she's just kidding every single time she tells that story. In time, their connection blossomed into a powerful and genuine partnership of 2 equals. Luciana was never content to simply be a spectator in Robert's career. She dove headfirst into the film industry, taking on roles in production and even appearing on screen right alongside him. She quickly became his elegant and constant fixture on every red carpet they attended. Yet behind the scenes, she was the true architect of their daily lives, managing all the intricate details so he could pour his entire being into his creative passion. She was the calming force who finally managed to gentle the restless spirit of a man who had navigated decades in search of his perfect counterpart. Together, they silenced the cynics by building a life that lasted for 30 years, proving that a bond founded on a mutual passion like the tango could effortlessly overcome any discrepancy in age. But their shared existence was about so much more than glamorous events and passionate dances. They cultivated an intensely private world, deliberately tucked away in the serene Virginia countryside, placing them miles away from the intrusive glare of Los Angeles. This leads us to their life at Burnley. You might be asking yourself why this high-profile pair would choose to live so far from the action, but Robert and Luciana selected the sprawling 300-acre estate called Burnley in Middleburg, Virginia, for a very deliberate purpose. As we touched upon before, while most of his Hollywood peers were frantically trying to remain in the spotlight in Beverly Hills, Robert was chasing something real. He longed to be woken by the sounds of nature, not the roar of morning traffic. This expansive farm became his ultimate sanctuary, a sacred space where he could shed the skin of the characters he portrayed and simply be himself. Life on the farm unfolded with a steady, comforting and predictable rhythm. It was here that Robert earned the endearing nickname of a country gentleman among his inner circle. His daily regimen was a world away from the controlled chaos of a Hollywood movie set. He would often spend his mornings leisurely riding his horses, and his afternoons were spent on the porch, thoughtfully reading through new scripts. He was a man who truly cherished life's simple pleasures like a perfectly prepared steak or a peaceful walk across his own sprawling property. This grounded lifestyle provided the tranquility he needed to continue delivering powerful performances well into his 90s. Now let's focus on his wife Luciana, as this remarkable woman was the cornerstone who made his peaceful life a reality. She was so much more than just his partner. She was the de facto manager of the entire estate, the person who kept all the complex gears of their life turning seamlessly. She expertly absorbed the daily pressures of operating a massive farm, which freed Robert to concentrate on his health and his artistic endeavours. It was directly because of her tireless management that his later years were not only astoundingly productive, but also wonderfully devoid of the usual Hollywood theatrics. Back in 2001, the couple also began dedicating much of their energy to philanthropy. They launched and personally operated the Robert Duvall Children's Fund. This incredible foundation performed essential work for families in need across South America, offering a wide range of support from healthcare initiatives to educational funding. This was a mission that was profoundly important to both of them, and they often seemed more eager to talk about the children their foundation was helping than about any of the classic films Robert had starred in. And in their adopted hometown of Middleburg, Robert was never seen as a larger-than-life movie star. To the local residents, he was just Bob. He was seen as a valued neighbour who was deeply invested in the community and who respected the local culture. He would casually appear at town events or sit down for a meal at a local diner without any of the usual fanfare that follows a celebrity. This profound mutual respect created an environment where he could live the kind of normal life that would have been completely impossible for him back in California. Animals were another immensely important thread in the fabric of their life. Robert and Luciana shared an incredible devotion to their many horses and dogs. In his last months, Luciana revealed that the quiet presence of these animals served as one of his greatest sources of comfort. They offered a silent, unwavering companionship that meant everything to him as he inevitably slowed down. Yet, despite the peaceful rhythm of their farm life, they never let go of the passionate spark that first brought them together in Argentina. It was hardly an unusual sight for them to spontaneously push all the furniture aside in their farmhouse living room to make space for a late-night tango session. This shared love of dance kept their connection vibrant for many decades. However, the reality of being a famous couple meant they could never fully escape the relentless churning of the rumour mill. That's right. In 2016, a torrent of stories began to circulate online claiming that Robert Duvall had suffered a debilitating stroke. Luciana immediately went into protective mode, moving swiftly to safeguard his privacy, shutting down the insidious gossip and ensuring his private medical affairs never saw the light of day in the tabloids. She was his most loyal and fierce defender, vigilantly controlling the narrative to make certain that the public only saw the image of Robert that he wanted them to see. Later that same year on The Howard Stern Show, Luciana masterfully put the stroke rumours to rest, famously quipping, "He's still grumpy as always, but that's it." But as Robert progressed into his 90s, the challenge of protecting their cherished privacy became a constant full-time occupation. This became particularly true as the decades of hard work started to take a visible toll on his body. So what was the real story behind Robert Duvall's final years and his health? For this legendary figure, the idea of being a delicate, aging actor was something he completely rejected. He refused to believe that getting older meant he had to stop and put his feet up. Robert Duvall approached the aging process with the same grit and determination he brought to his most challenging film roles. Even when his movements became slower and more deliberate, he absolutely forbid anyone from using a certain word around him. That word was retirement. He held a firm, famous conviction that for an actor to stop working and moving was to invite the final curtain call much sooner than necessary. It's precisely this relentless mindset that explains how he was still delivering powerful performances in major films like 2022's Hustle well into his 90s. But inevitably, the countless demanding days on movie sets and his lifelong passion for riding horses started to exact a price on his physical well-being. And though his pace had undeniably slowed, the discipline that defined his life remained as stringent as ever. Duvall was a firm believer in keeping things simple and straightforward. He consciously avoided processed junk food, preferring a clean diet centered on fundamentals like quality steak and fresh vegetables. For decades, he maintained a regimen of lifting weights, playing tennis, and, of course, riding his horses. But his goal was never about building bulky muscles. Instead, his focus was always on maintaining strength and stability in his lower body, keeping himself powerful and well-conditioned. He frequently shared his philosophy with others, insisting that the moment you lose your mobility, the rest of your health follows it into a rapid decline. Driven by this belief, he made a point to stay active and on his feet for as long as he possibly could, even as each step began to demand a little more resolve than the last. Throughout this journey, his wife Luciana stood as the ultimate protector of both his physical health and his indomitable spirit. Her role in his life went far beyond simply being his spouse. She was the anchor who made certain his legendary intellect and wit remained as keen and sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. Thanks to her dedicated care and companionship, he stayed fully present, sharp-minded, and deeply connected to the world around him right up until his final moments. To celebrate his 95th birthday in January of 2026, Luciana curated a deeply moving video montage weaving together cherished photographs from his earliest days as a young boy. The occasion was marked by an intimate private gathering at their beloved farm, a world away from the glitz and relentless chaos of Hollywood. Even at the incredible age of 95, the screen legend personally reached out on social media to express his gratitude to his loyal fans, proving to everyone that the quick-witted, formidable man they adored was still very much there. This is precisely why, when his final day arrived that February, his family felt it was crucial to be clear about the circumstances. They were adamant that there had been no secret sickness, no prolonged battle against some hidden disease. They moved swiftly to quash any emerging rumours of strokes or other speculative ailments. The truth was far simpler and more peaceful. He passed away from natural causes. After nearly a full century of beating strong, his heart had fulfilled its purpose and it was simply time for it to find its rest. Luciana later revealed that just days before his passing, he was still holding court, captivating everyone with his stories delivered with that trademark fiery intensity. He absolutely did not fade away into a cloud of confusion. He remained entirely himself until his time was up. A particularly poignant story emerged from his final week at his cherished Virginia farm, Burnley. Robert reportedly took one final slow walk out towards the pastures to spend a few moments with his beloved horses. He wasn't out there for very long, but it was long enough to take a deep breath and absorb the quiet, meaningful life he had meticulously built for himself so far from the sound stages and studios. This would be his last time outdoors on the farm before he moved inside for his final days of peaceful rest. Yet even as his body weakened, that unmistakable fire in his eyes never once flickered. It was the very same fire that was first ignited more than 7 decades earlier, the moment he first stepped onto a professional film set. So let's go back in time to witness how Robert Duvall initially stormed Hollywood during its golden age. This is the story of how a titan was built. Back in 1962, a young and determined Robert Duvall made his debut on a major movie set tasked with portraying one of the most enigmatic characters in American cinematic history. His role was the unforgettable Boo Radley in the classic film To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, most actors dream of a grand debut filled with powerful monologues and witty dialogue. Duvall's character, however, didn't utter a single word. In that performance, he masterfully used the shadows, conveying everything through a haunting, mysterious gaze that would stay with audiences for generations to come. For a rising actor, taking a silent role was a huge gamble, but he proved immediately that he possessed the rare ability to communicate a complex story just by being still and letting his eyes do all the talking. This quiet intensity instantly became his calling card. It demonstrated that he never needed to raise his voice to be the most compelling and captivating presence on screen. But getting to that career-defining moment was a long and difficult road. His life before that big break was anything but glamorous. In his early days, Robert was just another aspiring actor struggling to make it in New York City, sharing a notoriously cramped apartment with two other guys chasing the exact same dream. It just so happens those roommates were Gene Hackman and Dustin Hoffman. The three of them were perpetually broke, taking on all sorts of odd jobs, from waiting tables to driving cabs, just to scrape together enough money for rent. In their spare time, however, they poured every ounce of their energy into studying their craft under the tutelage of the legendary acting coach Sanford Meisner. Meisner drilled into them his core philosophy that great acting is simply living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. This fundamental training became the bedrock of the grounded, no-nonsense acting style that would define Robert's entire celebrated career. He rejected the over-the-top melodrama often associated with Hollywood movie stars. His one and only goal was to be completely, unflinchingly real on screen. In that small apartment, he and his roommates would spend late nights talking and dreaming about the future, with absolutely no idea that all three of them were destined to become titans of the industry. By the time the 1970s rolled around, Robert Duvall had transformed from a struggling actor into an undeniable force within the film industry. He secured the pivotal role of Tom Hagen in The Godfather, perfectly embodying the calm, collected consigliere to the volatile Corleone family. In a world spiralling into chaos, he was their unwavering anchor. Years down the line, when the third installment of an iconic film was being developed, Robert made a move that was practically unheard of in the cutthroat world of Hollywood. He chose to completely withdraw from the project after discovering an enormous pay disparity. Al Pacino was slated to receive a gigantic salary, while his own offer was comparatively minuscule. He communicated to the director that he'd be willing to take half of what Pacino was earning, but he absolutely refused to be compensated 3 or 4 times less. The man knew his own value and prioritised his professional dignity over a massive paycheck. Fortunately for moviegoers, Robert possessed an incredible knack for stealing the show, even when he wasn't the headline star. In the film Apocalypse Now, he masterfully portrayed Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore, a surfing-obsessed officer renowned for his famous declaration of love for the smell of napalm in the morning. He confidently wore a cavalry hat in the heart of a chaotic war zone, projecting an aura of terrifyingly calm self-assurance. This powerhouse role not only garnered him an Oscar nomination, but also solidified his esteemed reputation as a true actor's actor. Other professionals in the industry would study his performances to understand how he could take a small part and make it the single most unforgettable element on screen. He was a genuine chameleon. One year he could be found playing a soft-spoken, down-and-out country singer in Tender Mercies, a moving performance that ultimately won him his Academy Award. Then, in a stunning display of range, he would transform into a cold-hearted Manhattan corporate executive in the seminal movie Network. Over the course of his incredible 7-decade career, Robert collaborated with the most legendary figures in the entertainment business, including Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, and Steven Spielberg. At times, the work environment on his sets could become tense, primarily because Robert insisted on finding absolute emotional honesty in every single take. He possessed absolutely no tolerance for anything that struck him as artificial. He perfected the difficult art of acting without dialogue, a profound skill he retained right up to his final days in Virginia. He inherently grasped that the most powerful moments in film are often discovered in the pregnant pauses and the silences that exist between the words. However, out of all his cinematic masterpieces, There was one particular project so deeply personal that he had to finance it himself, a decision that would eventually unite him on screen with the love of his life. It was time for the director's vision to take centre stage. As a person with a restless spirit, Robert Duvall was never going to be satisfied with merely being a recognisable face on a movie poster. He felt compelled to be the one who shaped how a story unfolded. And this powerful artistic desire would ultimately lead to one of the most audacious gambles in the history of Hollywood. For a staggering 13 years, Robert tried to persuade major studios to finance a film he had written called The Apostle. Unfortunately, every single one of them declined. The executives just couldn't believe that a movie centred on a flawed shouting preacher could possibly sell tickets. Instead of abandoning his dream, Robert did something that led many to believe he had lost his mind. He committed $5 million of his own personal fortune and single-handedly bankrolled the entire production himself. It was a monumental risk that could have easily left him financially ruined. But he wasn't concerned with the money. He was driven by the need to share his story with the world. When the film was finally released in theatres in 1997, it was met with widespread acclaim and became an immediate classic. His performance as Sonny Dewey was so electrifyingly real and intense that the film often felt more like a documentary than a work of fiction. He didn't just play the character, he completely inhabited his soul. This passion project unequivocally proved that an artist does not require the permission or validation of big studios to create something truly magnificent. It also perfectly set the stage for his next major endeavour as a film director. In 2002, he directed and co-starred in Assassination Tango, a movie that provided him the unique opportunity to bring his real-life partner, Luciana, onto the silver screen with him. Working together on a creative and professional level served only to fortify their personal bond. They transcended being just a couple and became a truly dynamic creative team. Together they launched and managed Butcher's Run Films, their own production company which operated under a very clear and simple mission. Their shared ambition was to tell the raw, authentic and gritty stories that the conventional Hollywood machine systematically ignored. Robert greatly preferred the creative liberty of independent filmmaking, primarily because it guaranteed him total and unfiltered creative control. He had no interest in a boardroom of executives telling him how to edit his scenes or which actors he should cast. This fierce independence became the defining feature of his later career. He began to select projects based on their perceived honesty and integrity rather than on the size of the paycheck they offered. This was the chapter of his life where he fully stepped into the role of a mentor for the next generation of promising talent. Even though he lived a relatively secluded life on his farm in Virginia, young actors would frequently make the pilgrimage just for the chance to sit and listen to him speak. He genuinely felt that the young actors of that era were more talented and were deservedly taking over the industry. Robert would casually hold informal acting clinics in his own living room, teaching his students that the single most vital thing an actor can do is to truly listen. He encouraged them to stop forcing their performances and simply be themselves. He was a firm believer that the greatest cinematic moments happen when an actor becomes so lost in the role that they forget the cameras are even rolling. For him, the essence of acting was to be as lifelike as humanly possible, which often meant mixing professional actors with real everyday people who had never stepped onto a set before. In the last few years of his life, persistent rumours started to circulate about one final script he was diligently crafting alongside Luciana. While that project was never officially produced, those close to the family have said it was a deeply intimate story about the passage of time and the profound beauty of the countryside. He was reportedly still meticulously refining those pages until just a few days before he passed away. Luciana has often shared her reflection that Robert was simply incapable of being dishonest whenever the red light of the camera was active. He applied that exact same rigorous standard of honesty to his directing style, always hunting for that single perfect unscripted moment that felt completely genuine. He has left behind an unparalleled legacy of authenticity that very few figures in the vast history of cinema will ever be able to match. And that commitment to authenticity built a staggering financial empire, one that his wife Luciana now finds herself responsible for as the principal beneficiary of his entire estate. We're talking about the Duvall fortune. When you really break down his net worth, it becomes clear that Robert Duvall left behind far more than just a small nest egg. He bequeathed a colossal fortune, with estimates placing its value somewhere between a substantial $50 and $70 million. For a man who seemed to live a simple, secluded life on his farm, a figure of that magnitude might genuinely shock a lot of people. But it's crucial to remember that Robert was an absolute titan in his field for more than 6 decades. He was never the type of celebrity to squander his earnings on exotic cars or fleeting Hollywood fads. On the contrary, he channeled his wealth into assets with real staying power, beginning with the very soil he cherished in the Virginia countryside. The undeniable centrepiece of his extensive portfolio is Burnley, his magnificent 300-acre estate located in the heart of Middleburg. In the current real estate climate, a sprawling historic farm in such a prestigious and coveted location is valued at an astronomical sum. This property is so much more than mere acreage. It represents a tangible slice of American heritage, an investment whose worth has only compounded exponentially since he first acquired it many decades ago. Beyond the famous farm, the estate is composed of numerous other properties and smart investments that have been quietly appreciating in the background, while Robert remained dedicated to his art. This formidable bedrock of real estate ensures that the family's financial security is rooted in something far more dependable than the notoriously volatile stock market. And then, of course, there is the incredible legacy of his films. Each and every time a major network decides to broadcast a timeless classic like The Godfather or Apocalypse Now, a new royalty payment is triggered. Since Robert's filmography is packed with movies that have become indelible fixtures of American pop culture, these residual payments accumulate into a remarkably steady and significant flow of passive income. Even acclaimed television projects such as Lonesome Dove continue to generate revenue decades after the cameras stopped rolling. All of those future earnings now flow directly into the estate. They serve as undeniable financial proof of the enormous impact he made on the landscape of modern entertainment. His devoted wife, Luciana, is the individual entrusted to manage these considerable assets, making sure his professional legacy is protected with the same unwavering dedication they shared throughout their marriage. An exceptionally rare element of this situation is the simple fact that Robert never had any children of his own. So often in Hollywood, the passing of a legendary figure sparks a prolonged and bitter conflict among various heirs. That kind of public spectacle will be completely avoided here. Robert had made his wishes explicitly clear many years ago regarding his choice not to have children. By making that decision, he preemptively streamlined the entire inheritance process. Luciana was his constant companion and partner for 30 years, and she was equally involved in his life as she was in his business dealings. This profound and lengthy history of mutual trust all but guarantees there will be no shocking Hollywood will contest splashed across the front pages of the tabloids. Those close to the family fully anticipate that the transfer of assets will be conducted privately and with the utmost class and dignity. A significant portion of that inheritance has also been earmarked for the philanthropic causes the couple deeply cared about. Robert was passionately devoted to philanthropy, and it's widely expected that a sizable share of his wealth will be directed to the Robert Duvall Children's Fund. For many years, this specific charity has been an essential source of support for underprivileged families throughout South America. By continuing to finance these vital programs, his fortune will carry on transforming lives for the better, even in his absence. We also have to consider the future of Butcher's Run, their joint production company. Luciana has been a major creative and operational force at the company for quite some time. Industry insiders fully expect her to carry the torch forward, ensuring the company continues to produce the kinds of raw, honest stories for which Robert was so celebrated. But when you set all the money aside, the most valuable inheritance Robert Duvall leaves behind cannot be found in a trust fund. It resides in the profound respect of his peers who admired him for 50 years. This was the Duvall Code, the set of principles that explains why he never became another cautionary tale in Hollywood history. Robert Duvall was legendary for being a straightforward man who had absolutely zero tolerance for the superficiality and inflated egos that are so common among movie stars. He didn't employ a personal stylist or a swarm of assistants. More often than not, he would just get behind the wheel and drive himself. This profoundly down-to-earth approach to life is precisely what enabled him to maintain his artistic integrity. While many other actors from his generation began to seem like tired parodies of their former selves, he earned the revered title of the actor's actor, a designation signifying that he was the gold standard whom other professionals studied to understand how the craft was truly perfected. This unwavering reputation for authenticity took root all the way back in that modest New York apartment he once shared with Gene Hackman and Dustin Hoffman. The trio was famously dubbed the Three Musketeers of the acting scene, but Robert was consistently the most grounded and serious of the group. While his roommates may have revelled in the growing celebrity spotlight, Robert's true passion was always the work itself. He once famously declared that his goal wasn't just to play a character, his goal was to truly become that character. This philosophy meant he would go to extraordinary lengths like immersing himself in the South for weeks to master a regional accent or learning the genuine skills of a rancher for a Western film. He held a firm conviction that audiences could detect inauthenticity from a mile away, and he made it his life's work to never deliver a dishonest performance on camera. His dynamic with the film industry itself was always somewhat contentious. He cherished the act of creating, but he frequently felt like an outsider within the Hollywood system. He was never one to mince words or hold his tongue, even when it led to friction with some of the most powerful directors in the business. He recounted an instance where he and the iconic Marlon Brando would pass the time together on the set of The Godfather, just quietly trying to outperform one another in the most subtle ways imaginable. He never had to overact or shout the loudest dialogue to be the single most unforgettable presence in any scene. That profound self-assurance is what established him as a foundational figure in American filmmaking. He was the kind of actor who could communicate a lifetime of experience with a mere tilt of his head, something most actors couldn't achieve with a 10-page script. In his later years, this genuine quality evolved into a lasting legacy, serving as a hands-on tutorial for the rising generation of performers. Aspiring actors, including talents like Robert Downey Jr., frequently mentioned how Duvall represented the ultimate standard for a meaningful and impactful career. He was living proof that you could become a giant in the entertainment business without surrendering to the flashy, superficial lifestyle of a Hollywood celebrity. For the foreseeable future, Robert Duvall will undoubtedly be remembered as an unshakable cornerstone of American cinematic history. He was without a doubt the quintessential American cowboy who remained devoted to his origins and his profession until his final days. What will you remember most about this legendary performer? Share your memories with us in the comments section below. Remember to like this video, share it, and subscribe for more content. To watch another story like this one, simply click on the next video that appears on your screen.